This video is introducing you to Language Paper 2, Question 2. Remember, there are 5 questions and you're generally going for a mark a minute. Question 2 is worth 8 marks. Most students that I've taught spend too much time on this question, and part of it is because they overcomplicate it. Anytime you're supposed to combine 2 texts, people tend to get really nervous. So what does synthesis actually mean? The key word is inference. In this question, you're meant to infer information. This means you're supposed to use evidence to help you understand the bigger picture about a topic. What can you assume based on the evidence? What else can you assume or guess at based on the evidence? Inference means educated guess. So question 2 is asking you to synthesize information between 2 texts. It's important to remember the following. You need to focus on the question that's being asked. You need to find 2 or 3 points of similarity or difference between the texts, and you need to find a quote to back it up. Spend 10 minutes tops on this. Even if you haven't read both of the texts yet, you only need to read far enough into the text to get 2 points, and then you move on. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's look at an example. Okay, so here's an example having to do with the Odeon and going to the cinema. You need to refer to both source A and source B for this question. The children at the cinema in source A and the children at the factory in source B have different experiences of childhood. Use details from both sources to write a summary of what you understand about the different experiences of the children. So you just need to find 2 pieces of evidence from each text about the experiences of the children at the cinema in source A and at the factory in source B. Now remember, we've not even read these extracts in their entirety yet. The only thing that you've read is for question 1, lines 1 to 10 on source A. So let's go back to that. So we're looking at the experiences of the children at the cinema in source A. Okay. The experience of children going to the cinema. So we can get something from the beginning. Every Saturday afternoon, there was a feature film. The program went on and on and on. The street children would join up with the Erling children. The combined mass would add themselves to the other children. They would join a swarm of children. So, there's a combined mass. There's swarms of children. So they're all together. In the summer, the concrete paths were hot. The tarmac footpaths were even hotter. Bubbles of tar formed to be squashed flat by our leathery bare feet. Experiences of children going to the cinema. Does leathery bare feet connect? Maybe. Running around on graveled playgrounds throughout the spring. By summer, we had feet that could tread. Now that doesn't connect to the cinema particularly, so we need to go further. When you got to the cinema, the first thing you did was stock up with lollies. Okay, so they ate lots of sweets. Lollies was the Australian word for what the English call sweets and the Americans call candy. Some of the more privileged children had upwards of 5 shillings each to dispose of. In fact, 2 shillings was enough to buy you as much as you could eat. Everyone without exception bought at least one Hoadley's Violet Crumble Bar. It's a slab of dense, dry honeycomb coated with chocolate. So frangible was the honeycomb it would shatter when bitten. It was like trying to eat. I'm guessing the language question is from this because the language question loves description. Okay, I think we have enough that we could say, well, firstly, the children all swarmed together. So that's an experience going to the cinema. And the second thing about going to the cinema was having lots of lollies. Done. Okay? So we do not need to keep reading. We found 2 things. It's enough. Let's go to extract 2. Now remember, we've not even seen this one yet. This extract is from a magazine article published in 1868. The writer explains how sweets were made and decorated in Victorian England. But remember, the question is asking about the experiences of children in a factory. The last thing the children ask is how the sweet it snaps up with such eagerness is made. Okay? Yet the manufacture of these delicacies, or should I say necessities, of the nursery is a thing worth witnessing. A marvelous change has come across the public opinion respecting sugar and sweets of all kinds. They used to be denounced by tender mothers as trash and messes, and possibly because they were so denounced, they tasted all the sweeter to the little ones. Now, we would not wish to make taboo that which delights young taste buds the most. In moderation, there is nothing more wholesome than sugar. It is nourishing and warming, and because of the large amount of carbon contained in it. Now, do we have experiences of children in factories yet? No, we have to keep reading. In the past, sweets were not a specialty in England. There were no large factories for their production. All the high-class sweets came from France and Italy, but the introduction of steam into the processes has made England the world leader in manufacturing sweets. Now sweets are made on the largest scale and are much cheaper. The basic style of old is also gone. The eye must now be satisfied as well as the tongue, even in the cheapest items. Think of a half-penny worth of sweets done up with a ruby-colored gelatin packet. It is true that some of the more showy sweets made in the past were colorful, but it was metallic color containing the most virulent poison. The famous scientist Dr. Hassel's analysis of this painted confectionery, published some years ago, exposed the villainous manner by which these vividly colored confections were made attractive to children by poisonous paint. Lovely. Kind of like our E numbers today. The brighter the hue, the more deadly the sweet. The brighter green, for instance, with which the confectionery was adorned, contained copper toxins. We still do not have anything about the children, so you have to keep reading. It is easy to understand the bad name sweets acquired and thus made up. No doubt many young children were absolutely killed by excessive eating of these artistically poisoned candies. Dr. Hassel has heroically delivered us from this source of danger to our most precious children. Nothing but harmless vegetable colors are now used, which, if not so brilliant as metallic ones, are quite safe. Today, it's wrong to use metallic color. I bid parents beware, so I've just skimmed a bit. Young girls are largely employed in the sweet making trade. So there's our first point. Oftentimes, it's young girls at the factories. They are quick and stick well to their work. They have a sweet tooth and empty stomachs. Sweet tooth and empty stomachs. And so help themselves to the sweets pretty freely. As it is impossible to stop petty pilfering, the workers are given liberty to eat as much as they like, although the employers reduce the already pitiful pay to account for this. In the factory which I visited, the girls certainly did not look any the worse for their unlimited consumption of lollipops, and their rosy faces gave clear answer to the old charge against the harmful nature of sweets. Okay, in one part of the dimly lit, so the factories are dimly lit, I came across the little artists squinting as they colored the small sugar articles. So they're squinting as they colored the small sugar articles under the strict scrutiny of their supervisor. Vegetable colors, there's no great artistic talent required for the coloring task. It's far too cheaply paid to be carefully done. However poor they may be as works of art, the sweets are most wholesome. Okay, so I think we have enough. We can say it's mostly young girls with a sweet tooth and empty stomach, and the factories are dimly lit, and the girls have to squint as they color and perform art under strict scrutiny. So we've got 2 points for each. And remember, the question is asking about different experiences, so we pretty much identify that. In source A, you've got this experience that's here's the evidence, and this is what I can guess from the evidence. And then in source B, the experiences are very different, because in source A, the kids are all enjoying themselves and they're not working, they're playing. And in source B, the children are forced to work, and it's mostly young girls, and they get to eat the sweets, but it's part of their payment for some pretty intensive work. So now it's your turn. Again, take a past paper that's online and look at the question and read through until you get 2 points from each. If you're really fast and you have more time, come up with 3 points for each, but otherwise just go for 2. And then start with source A, say something connected to the question, have evidence, and then say what you can infer from that evidence about the experience of the children. So connect it to the question. You identify 2 or 3 similarities or differences, and that's all you have to do. You don't need to zoom in on the question. You don't need to say lots about the individual words. You find evidence and explain it in your own words to find similarities or differences. Now, the reality is, last year, the average mark for everyone for this question was 3 marks. Largely because they got confused and tried to have too much detail and didn't focus on the question. This is just a summary question. How is source A similar or different than source B connected to a question? So, success criteria. I've identified 2 or 3 similarities or differences. I have focused on answering the question. I have included at least 2 pieces of evidence from each. I have used connectives focused on similarities or differences. So on the other hand, conversely, right? And I have inferred meaning behind the evidence, what the evidence is suggesting to me. And I'm using my own words to say what it suggests. I've included at least 1 secondary interpretation gets you the top marks. So you would say, I can infer this. However, perhaps it might also suggest this.